Imagine living long enough to see silent films give way to talkies, black and white screens evolve into Technicolor dreams, and television rise from a novelty into a global addiction. Imagine beginning your career when Hollywood itself was barely old enough to walk and still being alive more than a century later, when streaming services beam stories into millions of homes at the press of a button. That is the staggering reality of the man we call today the oldest living star at nearly 103 years old. This is not simply a story about survival. It is about endurance, adaptation, and the strange, almost mythical quality of being the last link to a Hollywood most of us only read about in history books. He is not just old. He is timeless, bridging eras that seem almost impossible to reconcile. Born in the early 1920s, his childhood unfolded in a world very different from the one we know. The Great Depression still cast a heavy shadow across the globe. Families gathered around radios for news, while the silver screen was the great escape for millions of people facing economic hardship. In that era, film stars were not simply entertainers. They were icons of hope, larger-than-life figures whose charisma made audiences forget their troubles for a few precious hours. It was into this environment that the boy who would later become one of Hollywood's enduring figures first discovered the magic of performance. For him, the screen was not only a place to dream, it was a calling. The Golden Age apprentice, when he entered Hollywood, the studio system still reigned supreme. Actors were groomed, molded, and marketed by powerful studios who controlled their careers. It was an era of contracts, publicity machines, and carefully curated images. Many stars of that time were consumed by the system, chewed up, and discarded when the next new face appeared. But not him. From the beginning, he had something that set him apart: an ability to adapt without losing authenticity. He could play dashing young heroes in the post-war years, but he also brought subtle depth to more complex roles as Hollywood matured. In a world where many actors were pigeonholed, he carved out a career that stretched across genres and decades. What made him endure was not just his looks or his charm, though he had both in abundance. It was his professionalism, his willingness to evolve with the times, and his ability to navigate the treacherous currents of fame without losing himself. A witness to transformation. By the time television began to threaten Hollywood in the 1950s, he was already a respected presence in the industry. Where some stars refused to embrace the new medium, seeing it as beneath their dignity, he welcomed it. He understood that audiences were changing, and he wanted to remain part of their lives, no matter the platform. That decision extended his relevance at a time when many of his contemporaries faded into obscurity. He didn't just appear in films or shows. He became a symbol of consistency. Each generation rediscovered him, not as a relic of the past, but as a familiar, comforting presence. In the 1960s and 1970s, when Hollywood's counterculture revolution overturned traditional storytelling, he transitioned into mature, authoritative roles. Later, when blockbusters became the industry's new obsession, he lent his gravitas to projects that required both star power and credibility. It is rare for any actor to have a career spanning 3 decades. His stretched across 7. The secret of survival. So, how did he endure while others fell? Longevity in Hollywood is never an accident. Behind the glitz and glamour, survival requires discipline. Physical, emotional, and professional. Physically, he took care of himself. While excess destroyed many stars of his generation, drink, drugs, or reckless living, he remained grounded. Moderation and routine were his shields. He stayed active, sharp, and involved long after many of his colleagues retired. Emotionally, he managed the highs and lows of fame without collapsing under the weight of expectation. He did not chase trends desperately. He did not crumble when the spotlight shifted. Instead, he accepted change, even welcomed it, understanding that the true gift of longevity was reinvention. Professionally, he made choices that kept him relevant. He did not shy away from smaller roles if they carried weight. He did not reject television when it became dominant. And in later years, he embraced interviews, retrospectives, and appearances that celebrated his career, ensuring he remained in the public eye without being overexposed. A living archive of Hollywood at almost R3, his very existence is a kind of living archive. Through him, we can trace the entire arc of Hollywood history, from its glittering golden age to the modern era of billion-dollar franchises. His memories, his stories, his perspective, they are priceless windows into a past that would otherwise be lost. Consider this: he has outlived nearly all of his contemporaries. He has attended funerals of legends, outlasted entire dynasties of stars, and remained a witness to change after change. When he speaks of working with stars long gone, he is not recounting history, he is reliving it. That is what makes him such a rare treasure. He is not merely an actor, he is a bridge across time. The symbol of resilience for fans, his age is not just a number, it is a symbol. In a world obsessed with youth, where Hollywood often discards the old for the new, his presence at almost 103 is an act of defiance. It reminds us that true greatness is not fleeting, that endurance can be more impressive than the brightest flash of fame. Younger stars rise quickly, dominate headlines, and fade away, but he has endured, patient, steady, timeless. His longevity is itself a performance, one that no scriptwriter could have dreamed up. And so, when people look at him today, frail perhaps, but still alive, still part of the world that once crowned him a star, they see more than a man. They see a story about survival, they see hope. They see proof that the human spirit, when disciplined and resilient, can outlast the fleeting storms of time. A career written across decades. When you look at the man who is today the oldest living star, you're not just looking at a survivor of Hollywood. You're looking at someone whose career is an atlas of the entertainment industry itself. Every era of his life mirrors a new chapter of Hollywood history, from its golden beginnings to its reinvention in the digital age. His filmography is not just a list of titles, it is a record of cultural shifts, artistic revolutions, and the relentless march of time. To understand the depth of his career, we must travel decade by decade, because each period tells a different story, not only of the man himself but of the industry he helped shape. The 1940s, the war years and the rise of a leading man. The 1940s were not an easy time to begin a career. The world was engulfed in war, and the film industry, like every other institution, was forced to adapt. Many young actors paused their dreams to serve in the military. Studios adjusted their output to support morale, producing war dramas, patriotic musicals, and romances that carried hope in dark times. For him, this decade was both a challenge and an opportunity. He stepped onto the screen during a period when America desperately needed heroes, figures who could inspire resilience, courage, and faith in a better tomorrow. His youthful looks and charisma made him a natural fit for such roles. He quickly became recognizable, not as a superstar overnight, but as a reliable presence whose characters embodied the optimism audiences craved. He worked alongside directors who would later become legends, learning the craft not just from scripts, but from being part of a machine that turned out some of the most iconic wartime pictures. Each role was training, each performance a stepping stone, and even then, you could sense he was in it for the long haul, not chasing quick fame, but building a foundation for a career that would last. The 1950s television arrives, Hollywood shifts. The 1950s introduced a new challenge: television. Suddenly, movie theaters faced competition from living room screens. Many stars resisted this change, seeing TV as a downgrade from the prestige of film. But he embraced it. By appearing in both television and film, he showcased a flexibility that few actors of his generation had. This adaptability was crucial. Hollywood was no longer just about glamorous leading men. It was about actors who could command attention across mediums. He proved himself versatile, stepping into westerns, dramas, and even light comedies. During this decade, his reputation grew. He was not yet at the level of icons like Cary Grant or Gregory Peck, but he was carving out his own lane, a respected figure with a growing fan base and the trust of producers who valued his professionalism. The 1960s, reinvention in a revolutionary era. The 1960s shook the world. Civil rights, counterculture, war protests, and social upheaval changed everything, including film. Audiences no longer wanted glossy escapism. They wanted grit, realism, and stories that reflected their struggles. For an actor who had started in the idealized roles of the 1940s, this could have been a career-ending shift. But once again, he reinvented himself. In this decade, he took on roles with more depth, characters burdened by moral dilemmas, men scarred by war or lost in the chaos of social change. His performances grew darker, richer, and more layered. This reinvention not only kept him relevant, it elevated him. Critics began to notice what audiences had always sensed: behind his calm screen presence was an actor capable of complexity. He was no longer just a reliable face. He was a serious craftsman. The 1970s authority in gravitas. By the time the 1970s arrived, his career had already spanned 3 decades. Many actors from his early years had disappeared, faded into obscurity, or retired, but he was still here and thriving. In this era, his screen image shifted once again. No longer cast as the young hero, he transitioned into roles of authority: fathers, mentors, military officers, or seasoned professionals who carried the weight of experience. His age worked for him, lending him credibility in roles that required gravitas. It was during this decade that he solidified himself as not just an actor of the past, but a presence of the present. Audiences trusted him. Directors relied on him, and his performances gave weight to projects that needed a center of seriousness. The 1970s were also the birth of the blockbuster era. Films like Jaws and Star Wars transformed the industry. While he was not the face of those franchises, he appeared in projects that benefited from the new energy of cinema, reminding everyone that he could stand tall even in a changing landscape. The 1980s, legacy and television renaissance. The 1980s saw him embrace another wave of television success. Mini-series and long-form storytelling brought millions of viewers back to the small screen, and he was there, anchoring stories that reached living rooms around the globe. This was not the desperate grasp of an aging actor. This was strategic. Television allowed him to stay in front of audiences while film roles skewed toward younger stars. It was also an era of reflection. He began to receive lifetime achievement recognition, with critics acknowledging the sheer breadth of his career. For audiences, seeing him in the 1980s was like seeing an old friend. He had matured, but he had never disappeared. He was part of their lives, not just as an actor, but as a constant presence who seemed immune to time itself. The 1990s, the veteran's grace. In the 1990s, when he was already entering his 70s, he could have retired with his legacy intact. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned into roles that reflected his age. He played grandfathers, retired officers, wise elders, characters who added texture to films without dominating the screen. By this point, his mere presence carried history. When he appeared, audiences weren't just watching a character. They were watching decades of Hollywood embodied in a single person. He was a reminder of where cinema had been, even as it rushed into the future. This ability to age gracefully, to accept supporting roles without ego, set him apart from peers who either clung desperately to youth or disappeared altogether. He proved that an actor could remain relevant not by fighting time, but by embracing it. The 2000s and beyond, becoming a living legend. By the 2000s, most of his contemporaries were gone. He was now not just a veteran actor, he was a living legend. Documentaries featured him. Interviews treated him as a treasure trove of Hollywood history. Awards shows celebrated his contributions. And still, he appeared in occasional projects, often playing himself or characters that drew directly on his legacy. At this point, every appearance was symbolic. Audiences no longer expected him to carry films. Instead, they cherished his presence, as if simply seeing him on screen was enough to connect them to the golden past. As the years passed, his career became less about new performances and more about remembrance. He became the oldest link to a world that had vanished, a representative of a Hollywood most people only knew through old posters and black and white footage. A career like no other. What makes his career so remarkable is not just its length, but its adaptability. He thrived in the studio system, embraced television, navigated the counterculture revolution, lent authority in the blockbuster age, and aged gracefully into elder statesman roles. Few actors in history have managed to remain relevant across 7 decades. Fewer still have managed to do so without scandal or collapse. His career is not just about acting. It is about resilience, discipline, and understanding that fame is fleeting but legacy can endure. His personal life and philosophy of survival. When a man lives almost 103 years, his story is not only measured in roles and film reels. It is measured in relationships, in the quiet resilience of his private life, and in the philosophy that allowed him to endure. For the oldest living star, survival has never been just about staying alive. It has been about living well, adapting, and protecting the inner world that fame so often tries to steal away. To understand why he has lasted where so many others fell, we must look not just at the public image that millions adored, but at the private man who built a philosophy of survival one choice at a time. The man behind the screen in Hollywood, image is everything. For decades, studios carefully curated how stars appeared to the public. Glamorous, flawless, larger than life. But the man who would become the oldest living star was always more grounded. He understood that the world of film was performance, but life required something deeper. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he was not consumed by scandal. His personal life, while not without challenges, was marked by discipline, moderation, and balance. Where others indulged recklessly in Hollywood's excesses, he maintained control. Where others sought validation in endless parties and headlines, he valued privacy. Friends and colleagues often remarked on his steadiness. He was charming but never reckless, approachable yet always professional. These qualities may not have made him the most scandalous figure in the tabloids, but they gave him something far more valuable: endurance. Love, family, and grounding forces. Like all human beings, his personal life was defined by relationships. Over the years, he married, raised children, and built bonds that kept him tethered to reality. For many actors, family life is sacrificed at the altar of fame. But for him, family was a source of strength. His children grew up in the shadow of Hollywood, but he sought to shield them from its distortions. He spoke often about teaching values, discipline, humility, and perseverance that fame could never replace. To him, legacy was not only about the films he made, but about the lives he touched within his own home. Loss, of course, came too. Over a century of living means outliving friends, colleagues, and even family members. Many who once shared his journey are gone. Yet through grief, he found resilience. Rather than collapsing into despair, he carried memories as a form of strength, a way of honoring those who shaped him. The philosophy of moderation: ask those who knew him well, and they will tell you his greatest secret was moderation. In a city where excess was the rule, he chose balance. He enjoyed success but did not drown in it. He celebrated fame but did not chase it obsessively. This moderation extended to his lifestyle. While some stars smoked heavily, drank excessively, or pursued self-destructive habits, he kept his routine steady. He ate simply, remained physically active, and avoided the traps that consumed so many of his peers. This philosophy was not glamorous. It did not make for shocking headlines, but it was the foundation of a life that endured. By respecting his body, his mind, and his limits, he gave himself the best chance to live not just long, but well. The discipline of work. Another key to his survival was his view of work. For him, acting was not simply about glamour or fame. It was a craft. He respected the discipline it required. He showed up on time, prepared, and professional, even when others around him coasted on charm. Directors valued him for this. Co-stars admired him. He understood that talent could win you roles, but discipline won you longevity. This work ethic carried beyond acting. In interviews, he often emphasized that a career must be built on commitment, not shortcuts. For him, every role, big or small, was worth doing well. That philosophy carried him through decades of shifting trends, keeping him relevant even as the industry reinvented itself. Resilience through change. Living nearly 103 years means witnessing change at a speed few can imagine. He lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the rise and fall of empires, and the transformation of Hollywood from silent films to streaming platforms. Many people, when faced with constant change, grow bitter. They long for the past, resent the present, and fear the future. But he embraced change with curiosity. He did not cling desperately to the roles of youth. He transitioned gracefully, first into mature characters, later into elder statesman roles. This adaptability was not only professional, it was philosophical. He believed that to resist change was to resist life itself. By accepting each phase, he preserved his peace of mind. And in doing so, he became more than an actor. He became a symbol of resilience. The inner compass, dignity, and integrity. Fame can twist people. It can inflate egos, warp values, and turn ordinary human beings into caricatures of themselves. Yet, somehow, he maintained dignity. Part of this came from a strong sense of self. He did not measure his worth solely by box office numbers or reviews. He valued his craft, but he also valued his character. This integrity guided his decisions. He turned down roles he felt were beneath him, even when money tempted him. He spoke honestly in interviews, never hiding behind artificial charm. This inner compass protected him in an industry that often rewards the opposite, and it helped him maintain the respect of audiences across generations. Lessons from loss and longevity. Living this long means living with loss. He has seen colleagues celebrated as legends, only to watch them fade, forgotten by time. He has seen scandals destroy reputations, addictions end lives, and careers cut tragically short. And yet, he remains. This survival carries with it a kind of melancholy, but also wisdom. He often spoke of humility, the awareness that no one, no matter how great, escapes time. Fame fades, beauty fades, but character endures. His philosophy of survival, then, was not about defying time, but about living well within it. By accepting the inevitability of change and loss, he found peace. And that peace is perhaps the most important reason he has endured so long. The private joys, though known as an actor, his personal life was filled with simple joys. He loved reading, music, and spending time with his family. He valued quiet moments away from the cameras. Unlike some who needed constant attention, he could be content in silence, in reflection, in private life. This love of simplicity may have been the greatest balance to the chaos of Hollywood. For him, life was not only about red carpets or film sets, it was about being present in the ordinary, the kind of grounding that keeps a man sane when fame tries to pull him apart. His enduring philosophy: if his career teaches us about resilience in work, his personal life teaches us about resilience in spirit. The philosophy he lived by can be summarized in a few timeless lessons. Moderation sustains, avoiding extremes protects both body and mind. Discipline endures, work is not about shortcuts but consistency. Adaptation is survival, embrace change rather than resist it. Integrity matters, character outlasts fame. Simplicity heals, peace is found not in excess, but in balance. These lessons are not just the secrets of longevity, they are the secrets of dignity. At almost 103, the oldest living star has lived through more than a century of change. But his survival is not an accident. It is the result of a personal philosophy that valued discipline over indulgence, moderation over excess, and integrity over vanity. His personal life, far from the scandals that consumed so many peers, was built on love, family, and grounded living. His philosophy of survival reminds us that true greatness is not measured by how brightly one shines in a moment, but by how steadily one glows across a lifetime. In the end, his greatest role has not been on screen, but in life itself, showing the world what it means to endure with dignity, to live long with purpose, and to survive not just as a star, but as a man.